What's up, guys? Welcome to the Kingdom Men Transfer Man Nation, brought to you by our sponsor, the Acquisition CEO. If you want to buy or sell a business, they're the folks to contact, and I've actually got the owner in studio today of the Acquisition CEO, Michael Byers. Michael, tell us just a little bit about the Acquisition CEO and what that is.
All right. To start off with, thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, man.
Acquisition CEO, we help people if they're looking to buy a business.
Okay.
So anything from, for us, it's $1 to $5 million. We're wanting 10 employees or more, want to be in business 10 years or more. So if they're looking to buy a business, that's what we help with. We help with buy side and sell side consultation and, business growth. We do a lot of business growth consulting.
So business coaching, consulting, and that kind of stuff, and buying businesses. And earlier you were talking about how you like to buy weird things. So you guys checking out YouTube and the internet and all that kind of good stuff that follow me on there, you can check him out. What's the website?
AcquisitionCEO.com.
And if you want to buy a business or sell a business, check him out there and hit him up or send me a message and I'll connect you guys. But talk to us a little bit about some of the businesses that you like to acquire and some of the weird things. And just tell us a little bit of the story about how you ended up right here.
Man, I like to buy weirdo stuff, boring, profitable business.
Okay.
I like to buy, plumbing companies, HVAC companies. I've got a lot of real estate.
Yeah.
So everything around there. I bought a property management company.
Right.
I bought a forestry mulching company, a plumbing company, HVAC company, and just, anything that's weird, boring, and like a necessity. I'm looking for I want to say recession resistant.
Right.
Nothing's recession proof, right? But recession resistant stuff that, if you need that service, there's a need for it. It's not like, I want to paint my house purple tomorrow, right?
You're not looking
that's
for somebody.
a want. I want, if my heat and air goes out and it's the middle of summer or the middle of winter, I'm going to call somebody. And I'm going to pay the first person that answers the phone
That's right.
to come fix it, right? So that's what I'm looking for, stuff like that, boring, profitable.
So stuff that's a need. And then selling businesses and business consulting. So if you guys want to sell a business, you can hit him up as well because you'll help somebody navigate what their business could be worth and shoot them a real number. I know a lot of people have talked to me and you as well, both about businesses that they want to sell. And a lot of times they come to the table and they're just not worth what they think they are.
Unrealistic.
It's unrealistic. They always are development projects and all that kind of stuff. People want astronomical numbers, but when you look at the dollars and you look at cash flow and the money and the revenue that thing generates and the headache involved with the acquisition of all of it, typically they're not worth what people think. So if you want to get a valuation or at least ask some questions, Mike will be happy to answer those kind of things too. So how did you started a software company when you were 19, right?
Yes, sir.
And you dropped out of Clemson University
Yep.
to do that. Tell us a little bit about that story.
Yeah, so I had a scholarship going to Clemson, and I was sitting in class one day, and my teacher was kind of complaining to me in front of the whole class about hey, if you don't pay attention, you don't do what you're supposed to do, you're never going to graduate.
Oh, man.
When you get out, you got to remember this was 20 years ago now.
Right.
When you get out, you're going to be making $40,000 a year. In 2 or 3 years, you'll be making probably 60.
Right.
10 years, you'll be making 80, maybe even 100. And I started the software company when I was right at the end when I was 18, first when I was 19. And I was doing pretty good. I was making $8 to $10 grand a month at that point.
Right. So you were making more than what they were saying you was going to be making.
That's right. And my response to him was, I'm not going to sit here and listen to y'all complaining to me and take a pay cut.
Right.
And
you're like, I'm out.
Well, his response was, if I was making that much, I think I would just leave. I said, you know what? I think I will. So I throw my books in my book bag, and out the door I went, and I ain't been back.
That's so funny. You're like, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I'll see you later.
I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yeah. That's the greatest lesson I ever got out of my college education.
But it was, that was the greatest lesson.
Yeah.
Because if I would have stuck there, I'd have been there for another 2.5 years. I would have graduated. I'd been like, 90% of America, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would have been stuck on that hamster wheel with no shot to get off.
Yeah.
Him telling me that probably changed my life, man.
I'll tell you a funny story. When I was in college, I started a company. I've always been in cars, and I started a company called Justang Mustang Parts, and I was reselling Mustang parts on the internet. And this was back in 2005, 6. The internet was kind of barely around.
It was new.
So it was new, and I had a guy out of Charleston, and he had deals with all the manufacturers, K&N, B&M, Ford Racing, all these parts companies where he could buy wholesale. He had the licensing with those guys, and I made a deal with him where I was retailing them. And I went around in the college parking lot. I put flyers out. I had T-shirts made. And this was like back before retail stores really existed on the internet. And it's kind of funny. I wish that's what happened to me. You see, I stayed in college and I ended up in the corporate rat race. Eventually, I got kicked off the team, got into entrepreneurship and business ownership. But that's what happened to me. I had an idea and everybody's like, man, that doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, okay, I got talked out of my dreams,
right.
But if I'd have stayed in that, who knows what that could have turned into. So,
for me, it was more about, if I stayed in there, then I would have to go to work and I would have to bet on those folks to take care of me for the rest of my, life or career or whatever.
Yeah.
Doing what I did, I'm betting on myself, and I'm going to bet on myself
every time.
Yeah, 11 out of 10 days.
Yeah. I tell you what's funny is people, when I talk to people about getting into business or growing their business or taking it from a side hustle and turning it into something more productive, people are always like, well, I'm comfortable with my job. I have that conversation with people a lot. They kind of have a side business and they have a job. And I'm like, well, they're like, I like that job security. And I'm like, well, there's no such thing as job security because you're there at their will, right? If you run your business, you're in charge. You get to dictate what you just said. You get to bet on yourself. I had that happen. That's how I ended up getting out of corporate America is I got kicked off the team. Right, I thought I had job security and a good 6-figure job, and they're like, "Hey, we don't want you to play on the team anymore." And I was set out to dry. And after that, I was like, "I'm never going back."
Right.
But it's funny how people think that, or they do it for the benefits. Well, if you generate enough revenue, you can buy all the health insurance you want,
right,
and all those kind of things.
And you can get maybe better than what you got currently.
Yeah, 100%. You get access to more things for sure. So that's kind of an interesting story. So you went through that. That was college, and you got out of college. And then what happened after college, kind of in between college and what you're doing now as far as buying and selling and doing business consulting and that kind of stuff?
So, I mean, I'm not like some of the gurus out there who they want to go teach you what they read in the book 2 months ago. I bought businesses. I sold them.
You went to work.
Yeah, I went to work. I built up the portfolio I got now. We've got 22 companies currently under management. We bought 5 last year. But, we do 140 to 150 million a year.
Yeah.
That's what I was busy doing while everybody was reading books trying to be a guru.
That's right. They were reading books, and they were either doing that or trying to get a job. It's funny, me and Tyler were talking about that earlier. Alex Hormozy, he talks about it doesn't matter the affirmations you say to yourself or the books that you learn. You got to get out there and get some battle scars. Like, you got to go do the work.
You got to make mistakes.
That's
where you're going to learn.
That's exactly right. You learn through failure. I talk about that a lot. Like, it's only inevitable that things in life, we fail at something, right? And we really only fail when we quit. But if you reflect on that and you pick yourself up and you go, okay, well, I screwed that up. How can I take what I learned and put those parts and pieces back into the next thing? You can literally, and you do that and you learn to do it faster and faster and more thoughtful and thoughtful. You can scale in a rapid amount of time.
Right. And that's what I tell my customers too. Is it going to cost to work with me?
Yeah.
For sure. But what I'm going to do is help you not make the mistakes I've made.
Right.
And I promise you, I've made some costly mistakes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no doubt. So that's actually one of the things I tell people about mentorship and coaching. The fastest way to get from point A to point B is hire somebody that made all the mistakes. Like, that doesn't matter what you want to do, whether you want to be a real estate agent, whether you want to acquire businesses, whether you want to sell insurance, start a landscaping company. And that's actually a piece of advice somebody gave me when I got into real estate. They said, find the top producers and go have coffee with them and ask them what they did, like how'd they do it? Because a lot of times they'll sit down and they'll tell you. Another guy, he told me, he said, when I lost my job, he said, you need to have lunch with a millionaire a week. And I was like, well, that seems weird. And this guy's pretty wealthy, and he owns a couple of businesses. And so I took him up on that, and I started having lunch with a millionaire a week. And, they say you become who you surround yourself with.
Right.
And you learn from those people, or you pay them for their advice, and they give you massive amounts of wisdom. There are people out there that pay $100,000 for pieces of advice, for a day. I mean, it's a real thing. Mm-hmm. But the wisdom that you get out of, 20 years experience?
22, yep.
22 years of experience in business acquisitions and ownership in businesses. And we're not talking about, little Uncle Bob's landscape company. We're talking about, what do you say, $140 million worth of revenue in a year?
A little bit more than that, but yeah.
Okay. Yep. We're talking about some wisdom in there. We're not talking like you're doing $100,000 a year. You've beat the bushes. You've shaken the trees. You've figured out what doesn't work. And now you're helping other people do the same thing. And I think that there's significant value in that for sure.
I've made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah. Tell us about some of the mistakes you made. Let's have some fun conversation around that.
I mean, I bought, during my tenure of buying stuff, I've only had 2 companies that I bought fail, which, I learned from those mistakes, right? I bought a concrete company. I didn't do enough due diligence on it. And, it just, it wasn't the company was bad. It was the guy that had it before me was not a real good guy. I let him stay on as, an operator, which is what I like to do. Obviously, I can't run 22 things on a day-to-day.
Right.
So I like to find a quarterback for each thing that I buy. But I allowed him to stay on and caught him stealing. And just, for me, as I buy something, especially if the old owner's going to stay on, the due diligence is not just about the business. It's about that person as well. Because, a lot of times you'll learn that if the person is a train wreck, so is the business. You might just not have found it yet.
Yeah.
Right? But, you can't have little Bobby who goes out here and makes $10,000 a week and goes and blows all on cocaine and strippers.
Right.
And, it's there's something in that business that's a train wreck, just like little Bobby.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's actually one of the things that I found in coaching small businesses and that kind of stuff is usually the business and the cash flow and the books and all those kind of things are a result of people's bad personal habits, right? They're lazy themselves, and so they're lazy in their business, or they're lazy with all the things. They get a little comfortable, right? Like you said, they're generating $10,000 a month, and then they're like, oh, okay, I'm really making it. And then they start to outrun that expense, or they start to spend more than they're making, and they're not paying attention to generating revenue and that kind of stuff, and they're having a good time, and they hire somebody to do their marketing, and they hire somebody to do lead generation. They quit building relationships, and they quit doing a lot of the small things they did in the beginning, but usually it is related to the person themselves.
For sure. That's definitely true. I mean, here's what young entrepreneurs, not young as in age, but young as in, business tenure, what they don't understand is, they're used to making $20, $30, $40, $50,000 a year working at, their W-2 job. They get out here, they find something, they make them 100. Now you can't tell them anything, but what they don't understand is that money is a tool, right? So, anytime you make anything over, let's say $80,000 to $100,000 a year, you can pay all your bills.
Yeah,
right?
oh yeah.
You can pay all your bills. You can live a comfortable lifestyle. You can let your kids go do what they want to if they want to play sports or whatever.
Right.
Anything over that, you're either going to waste, or you're going to invest it, or you're going to save it.
Yep.
You only got 3 options.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just up to them. A lot of those guys, if they go from making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year to making $100,000, $120,000, they think, oh, look at all this extra money I can go blow. I can go buy 3 new cars.
Buy a new bass boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the stuff.
But, they don't understand if they take that extra $50,000 a year and they invest it, where are they going to be in 20 years?
Exactly.
Right.
So I saw that a lot back in like 2000. Well, when I was getting out of college, I had some older friends, and they were all taking out second and third mortgages on their real estate, and they were buying new trucks and new boats and all that kind of stuff.
Depreciating assets.
Exactly. Depreciating assets. Instead of buying appreciating assets, they're buying stuff. They're going broke. They're borrowing money against an asset to go broke. And they should have been borrowing that money and buying assets and investing that in business or business opportunities, or investing it in somebody that was building businesses or could leverage that opportunity. Because you're 100% right. Money's just a tool. And once you hang out with people that understand how all that works, and there's a lot of bullshit on the internet, on TikTok and Instagram and all that kind of stuff about, oh, hey, go do this and you can make $300,000 in a week. Well, that's just ain't gonna happen. But when you hang out with real people who understand how to leverage those things and do those things, and the tax advantages of acquiring real estate assets and that kind of stuff, everything starts to change. And you can start to teach people where they go, okay, hey, this is a tool. But it's funny because the people who pretend to be wealthy usually drive the brand hammer new pickup truck. And then you see people like, I know a lot of people that are very, very wealthy, and they ride around in a 10, 15-year-old vehicle. They don't even care. But that person may own 14 businesses or, 150 rental units, and they understand the value of the dollar. And so, sure, they may have a beach house, but they ain't got a $150,000 pickup truck. And so, like the guy that running the landscape business that's making $100,000 a year, riding around in a $150,000 pickup truck, you're like, man, that payment every month. Imagine if you could leverage that payment, that revenue that you're making towards an investment property or something like that. So
that's it.
true.
You talk about that, and I'm just sitting here thinking, I drive a 2019 car.
Right.
I got 185 single family homes and 22 companies. I'm like, I don't got to show up and look good.
Right.
I just got to perform.
That's exactly right. It's
right.
so funny. And a lot of times that's what it's about. It's about people, they want to look good. They want to pretend like they've got it all together.
They don't pay any bills.
It don't pay no bills.
Yours or somebody else's.
It don't pay your bill. In fact, it takes you the opposite way. It runs you broke when you're trying to make because you can buy a $150,000 pickup truck. Payment on that's got to be $1,500, $2,000 a month, probably. Could you imagine? You could buy 2 homes. You could buy 2 investment properties.
Yeah, and that's going to bring in $2,500 a month every month.
Exactly. And so, but people they get hung up on that look and that attitude or that pride on the internet. And I don't know if that's something you got to grow through or something people got to beat you over the head with, or maybe you got to go broke a time or two and try those kind of things. But it's so true. And so if you're listening to this, pick up on this advice, because he's literally giving you 150, maybe more than that, $250,000 worth of free advice, right? And saying, don't go buy depreciating assets. If your business or your paycheck or whatever you do for a living, if you're generating additional revenue, don't go buy more junk.
No, go buy cash flowing assets.
Yeah.
You can take that cash flow or whatever it is that's generating the revenue and use it to go buy that truck if that's what you want to do.
Exactly.
Just like we talked about, that truck note might be $2,000 a month. But if you go spend that same money, you go buy 2 rental houses, and those houses produce $2,000 a month, $2,500 a month. Yeah. Great. Now you can go buy that truck, and you got $500 a month left over.
Well, that, and you have the tax advantages of acquiring the real estate assets,
right? Which
is a whole nother different advantage.
Yeah, but single families depreciate over 27.5 years.
Right, so a little bit there.
Right, you got a little bit, but it's not going. It's not going to help you like if you go buy a business, because at that point you can write off. I think
all kinds of things.
Yeah, it's
pretty
big numbers.
You can write everything off.
Yeah, it's big numbers.
So hire a good tax advisor when you get into those kind of things.
Correct.
It's fun.
Correct.
All right, so that's cool stuff. So take heart to that, because a lot of young people do it. I did it when I was younger. I had a good job, and I bought a bunch of junk, and it was a waste of time and money. And I had to go live in a camper at one point in my life because of that. I had to learn a very hard lesson. And then after that experience, I thought, it's just stuff, right? So it's just stuff. And so then I started thinking, okay, well, I'm making good money. How can I leverage that into acquiring other things that will produce revenue in my pocket? And that's a whole different concept and mindset. And I think there's a lot of maturity and growth in that. But it also has to do, again, with the people that you hang out with or your mindset. Because a lot of people, your buddies, they're going out to the bar every Friday night. They're going out to the bar every Saturday night. They're buying the new truck. They got the new bass boat. Great for them. They're spending all that money. I don't really care about any of that kind of stuff anymore. But they're spending all that money, and so you see it, and we get into this comparison mindset. Oh man, look at that guy! I want to be like that guy. And plus, I say that all the bullshit on the internet, people go literally rent Lamborghinis and rent these fancy cars. They'll go rent a beach house. They pretend like they got it all together. And I tell you, somebody the other day, they said, a lot of people on the internet aren't that way in real life.
Right.
I know some people that have met some of those influencers, and they're like, that ain't them. It's all pretend.
Right.
And so don't get hung up if you're watching this with the TikTok videos and the Instagram videos. Go find people in your community or hit us up in some fashion or capacity. Find people to hang out with or get coffee with that will give you real honest advice and real numbers and just hit you over the head with the truth.
Right. Sometimes it may hurt, but it's a lot of times what you need.
Well, it'll save them a lot of headache. Right. We were talking earlier about, what did we say? Not smart and stupid. We were talking. I was going to tell the bulldozer story. You had said something.
Oh, I can't remember. I know what you're talking about.
We were talking about cocaine and strippers, I think, and that's something about stupid and being smart. Anyway, I don't know what it was, but there's definitely, you can be real stupid, and buying depreciating assets is really dumb. And personally myself, if I go buy something, if I buy a truck or whatever it needs to be, I always buy it less than retail. So I won't buy something unless I can get a good deal on it. And it's still a depreciating asset, but I'm not paying what they want for it. I'll either wait and find one until I can get it for a deal I know I can, if I ever resell it, I can at least get my money back out of it. What's your 2 cents on stuff like that?
For me, if I want to go buy a new truck, I'm going to make sure if I'm going to take a note on it or, anything like that, anything that's depreciating, if I'm going to take a note on it, I'm going to go buy something before that's cash flowing at least that much or more. Because at the end of the day, I know that if I do go take a note on a truck, it's going to be a 3-year note.
Right.
And I know if I buy a cash flowing asset that will cover that truck note for the 3 years, I know in year 4 I get to put all that money in my pocket. And year 5 and year 10.
Yeah. That's good.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I could get a new truck every 3 years just by going and buying X.
Yeah. I heard somebody on a podcast the other day talking about that thing. There's a guy by the name of Myron Golden. You know that guy?
Myron. Yep.
So Myron, he was talking about that. He said wealthy people, they create things to generate revenue to buy things. And it's a different, you're
not spending your money, you're spending what something is generating for you.
Exactly. So when you have a job, you're exchanging time for money and then you go spend it. What wealthy, successful people do is they buy things that generate that revenue. Just like you just said, they could create something, whether that's a rental property or a book or some sort of something that generates revenue so that they can go out and they could buy whatever they want, whether it's another property. Usually it's kind of, at that point you start to collect things, right?
For sure. And that's how I got all the rental properties I got, because I started out, I was like, I want to have 50 properties.
Right.
And then I got to 50. I was like, I might as well go to 100.
Might as well keep going.
I got to 100. I'm like, 150 don't sound bad.
150 don't sound too crazy. But what's funny is
the thrill of the chase is what it was.
Exactly. And I think that's what people get hooked on is they may say, oh, I want to go buy a Lamborghini, but then they get hooked into the idea of, oh, I can do something that generates revenue that I don't have to exchange my time for. And so then they go, well, okay, if I can do that, then instead of going and buying that thing I thought I was going to buy, I'll go over here and I'll do it again. And then they're like, well, if I did it over here, maybe I go over here and do it again. And then all of a sudden that's what they're doing. They're acquiring those things, and those appreciating assets are things that generate cash flow and revenue instead of buying all the junk.
Right. But, all the junk is it doesn't change your life. It's for everyone else. It's not for yourself. You know? Can I afford a Lamborghini? Absolutely. Do I want one? No. It doesn't matter.
Well, they're terribly uncomfortable.
I've never even been in one, if you don't know the truth.
You're not missing anything. I've had some friends that have had them, and man, they're short, they're tight, they're small. Like I thought when I was a kid, I had a poster on my wall of a red Lamborghini. I thought, man, that'd be so cool one day. Until I rode in one, and I was like, this is the dumbest vehicle on the planet. Literally, it's expensive. The oil change is expensive. You can't drive them anywhere. They're not comfortable. I would much rather ride around in a pickup truck. I've never been one to do whatever to impress anybody. Just kind of coasted along, Yeah.
I don't got to impress anybody. As long as I can pay my bills and my family's good, it's all that stuff's for somebody else. It wouldn't be for me.
Yeah.
It wouldn't make me happy in the morning.
Right. No, and a lot of people that acquire those kind of things, they end up selling them anyway because they realize the same thing. People do that. I mean, why would you go out and you buy a car that requires a $3,000 oil change?
I'd rather spend that $3,000 taking my son somewhere to go hang out, or taking my family somewhere to go do something that everybody's going to enjoy and make memories, right?
Yeah. No, I think memories are valuable. And that's another thing too, even in business and all that kind of stuff. And young people, they forget about that kind of stuff, right? Young people, they get hung up on the Lamborghini and the Ferrari and all the cool, weird things that seem cool. But what really matters when you get a little older, you start to realize what actually really matters. And it's making memories with those kids. Like me and my daughter, the memories that we make now, I make business decisions based on my experience with my daughter. Like the experiences, the experiences that I want to have with her and those kind of things will play into the fact of how much time I want to commit to something. Like if it's going to be expensive, because there's an expense to everything, right? Everything costs something, and not necessarily just $1, but time too, or a memory. And so if something's going to get in the way of my relationship with my wife or my daughter or those kind of things, the answer is just no. Yep. Because a lot of people, unfortunately, they pay the expense of learning that the expensive way, and they get older and it may cost them their relationship with their daughter. Like I know some successful business guys and their kids hate them. Right. And that's terribly sad to me.
Yeah. I've never wanted to be that guy. I'd rather be broke and live in a tent and be able to go do stuff with my family than, be rich and live in a gazillion-dollar mansion and nobody comes over.
Right. And
at that point, it's right back to the Lamborghini concept. You're doing it all for somebody else.
Right? No matter. And I think maybe that's the key takeaway here is, if you're listening to this, when you're making decisions and those kind of things, because service makes an impact, right? When you do things for others, when you have other people in mind, and that's kind of who God made us to be anyway, was to be able to do things and build things and to be a service to the people around us. And that's where we make an impact. And a lot of people, they say impact over income. And so that's kind of a thing too, where if you can make a difference, like think about being able to make a difference in your kids' lives through generating the businesses. Like think about how painful it would be if you'd have stayed in that classroom in Clemson and you had a job and you went through life and you were trapped and married to that thing and you weren't able to spend the time with your kids and do the things and make the memories. When you're laying on your deathbed, if you'd be going, I wish I had walked out of the classroom. Right. One of the things I think about a lot. So my dad, he said that a lot. I wish I had a. And I was like, man, when I grow up, I'd rather fail and learn and screw up and try and keep trying and keep fighting rather than get older and go, I wish I had a. I wish I'd have tried that. Because you never know if you don't try. I always tell people you can't catch a fish if you ain't fishing.
Right.
That's like my redneck business sense. People are afraid to make phone calls, or they're afraid to send a message, or they're afraid to ask questions, or they're afraid to try things. I'm like, or even in sales, people are like, oh, my sales volume's down. I'm like, well, how many phone calls you make? They're like, oh, I'm afraid to make phone calls. I'm like,
that's why your volume's down.
That's why your volume's down. Or like in Atlanta, any kind of business or the subcontractors and things that I coach, when I first get started with them, I'll ask them, like, hey, what's your revenue generators? Like, how are you making money? Like, what do you do on a daily task that puts money in the business? And usually they're slim to none. And I'm like, well.
Or they don't know.
And I'm like, that's a big problem.
I just do this thing and money comes in.
Yeah.
I don't know what thing it is, though.
Yeah, they have the strategy of hope. And I'm like, when you get to the end of the road, hope's a good strategy to have, but there's a lot of ways you can circumvent having to just have hope in your business. But a lot of that ties down to just go fishing, go ask people, talk to people, tell them what you do. I made a post the other day about a young man. He started a dumpster business. Wasn't the one that we found on Facebook, but a young guy started a dumpster business. He calls me up. He said, man, I'm having a problem getting some revenue coming. And I asked him that question. I said, well, what are your tasks that you do to generate revenue? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, have you posted on the internet? Have you called subcontract? I know people right now that need dumpsters. Have you called people? He's like, no, I don't want to make phone calls. I'm like, you realize you could put 10 grand in your pocket if you made 100 phone calls.
Right.
And he's like, what do I tell them? And I'm like, you just tell them that you have a dumpster company and you have 5 dumpsters available and you'd be happy to bring them to them. That's all you tell them. And they'll be like, okay. And you exchange information. But that's so true. People, they don't know what those things are. So that's good stuff.
Or they're scared, at the end of the day. People are, a lot of times, are their own worst enemy, right?
Oh, yeah. We talk ourselves out of things.
Yep, they're scared. Well, what if they say no? Great. Go to the next one.
Yeah, make another phone call.
They all aren't going to say no. If you keep calling enough, you're going to get a yes somewhere.
That's exactly right. And even if you suck at being on the phone or talking to people or building relationships, eventually
you're going to get better.
You're going to get better through the process of failing at it.
Right. You should anyway, right?
Yeah, you should. If not, I've found that most people do get better at it over time, even in real estate sales. Having coached a bunch of real estate agents previously, over time, the more phone calls you make, the better it gets. And I have never seen anybody put time on the phone or into building relationships that doesn't pay off. Doesn't pay off ever.
For sure.
For
sure. And you were talking about, you heard a lot of people say something about impact over income.
Yeah.
But I agree to a certain perspective with that. What they're not realizing is the more income you make, the more impact you can make.
The more impact you can make, 100%.
I get people say stuff to me like that all the time. It's you gotta help, but if you're broke, you can't help nobody, man.
If your business is broke and it ain't making no money, you can't help nobody. Right. It's just going out of business.
The more you make, the more you can give back.
Yeah,
I like to give back a ton to local communities and even folks not here. But
yeah, I agree.
You can't do it broke. I mean, if I worked at McDonald's, it'd be tough.
It'd be real daggum tough. Well, I always ask people, what do you think the number one task of an entrepreneur is? And again, they say, I don't know.
Putting out fires
and generating revenue.
Putting out fires.
If you can solve problems and put out fires, that's a big piece of it for sure, through emails. And being a good communicator, I think, has a lot to do with that too.
Yep, I agree.
because it's not if but when you're going to have a tough conversation with somebody in your business, somebody outside your business. Something's going to go sideways. The math is going to be different than you expected. And so being able to communicate and articulate that in a way that you can still create a winning scenario for everybody, I think is a tough thing for people to articulate. And they just get scared, and like you were saying, they get scared and they shut down, and then they just withdraw. And then they tell themselves a lie about why they can't go do those things instead of just going and doing the things.
Right. I think, a lot of times people see stuff like that, like conflict, not necessarily even conflict, but they see things like that come up, and they think, well, Justin's got to lose for me to win, or right. I got to lose for Justin to win.
Right.
And, it's not about one person losing and another person winning. It's about how can you all work together, where everyone wins. If you can make it a win-win, you live to do business with that person another day.
Yeah.
If you burn all the bridges, eventually ain't going to be nobody doing no work with you, right?
Right. And even not having the conversation is a form of burning the bridge.
Right.
I had somebody years and years ago, they told me they over-communicate and under-surprise, right? Even if it's bad news. If you tell them, usually everybody can survive that. But it's when you just don't say anything and then everybody gets surprised or whacked over the side of the head with a school bus. Right. That's a bad day. But I think that's a great strategy, too, of, hey, most things in life can be a win-win. Even when it's a no, it can still be a win-win. It's really not it's not really a no. It's just a not right now.
Right.
So I think having those conversations are important.
And you never know, even if they do say no, as long as you were respectful, everybody got along. Who knows? They might refer someone else to you down the street.
It's all about maintaining those relationships.
That's it.
Yeah, 100%.
Don't burn the bridges.
Don't burn the bridges, because relationships are everything. I've got a friend of mine. He's a billionaire, and one of his things that he teaches people is relationships build recession-resistant businesses. Nothing's recession-proof, but relationships and doing a good job, doing what you said, and communicating clearly with people. That's how you do it. It's through building those relationships. And a lot of people, unfortunately, they are scared to go shake some hands, make some phone calls, show up at an office, do the things, build the relationships, and have the conversations. And when you do that, and you learn through failure and you create opportunity and you become more valuable as an entrepreneur, as a person, it takes you places. And then same thing, even like what you just said, even if it's a no, they may know that phone may ring one day and say, hey, man, we weren't able to get that deal done, but I got this other guy down here and we got this deal and sounds like it'd be a good fit for you. Would you like to be part of it? Well, it was a no then, but because everybody handled themselves in a professional way at that time, things always happen. So I think that's a real good piece of advice too.
For sure. And you bring that up. I've got a business partner. We went to a trade show last April. And we didn't get much out of it. I love going to trade shows. I normally get good business out of it. But we talked to a guy at the trade show. No, you don't have the product that we need, but we'll keep you in mind. He called today on the way over here to meet you.
Oh, really?
Yep. He's going to place about a $200,000 order just because you didn't burn the bridge back then.
That's right? So cool.
So that's a great example, though. You know, it might be no today, but I guess 10 months down the road, it might be a yes.
I tell people all the time, when I was coaching real estate agents, you need clients now, you need clients in a year, you need clients in 3 years, 5 years. So whatever you're doing, you're 100% right. If they say no today, at some point, if you handle that and you follow back up with them and you just kind of hold their hand a little bit and you kind of date them, you build that relationship, when it comes time for them to tell somebody to call their guy or call their person, they're going to call you.
Right.
Building relationships is a huge piece of business. One of the things I always like to ask people is if you could give somebody a few pieces of advice, whether it's personal and business or whichever one of those it may be, if you could give somebody that's watching this, it's like a young entrepreneur or struggling with things, what would the top piece of advice be that you could give them?
Bet on yourself, because you're never going to let yourself down. And you can control everything that happens if you're betting on yourself, right? If you have to go to a job or you have to go deal with whatever, you're not in control of that.
Yeah.
If you're betting on yourself, if you're going to get up in the morning and go work
that's good
10 hours a day. If you're betting on someone else, they might tell you, hey, we don't need you tomorrow. Come back on Friday. If you're betting on yourself, you can. That's how I got to where I was at. When I started a technology company, man, I offered a product that a lot of other people offered. I just outworked them.
Yeah.
I was working 12, 15 hours a day where these other guys were working 6 hours a day. Well, I'm getting 2 to 3 times done in a week.
Yeah.
What they were getting done, but I could bet on myself, right?
Well, and a lot of people too, they don't do it for long enough. How long did you have to do that? It wasn't like a week,
No, probably. I mean, to get to the level when I quit school, probably 12 to 18 months.
Okay, so you put in a solid year of hard work. And even Tyler, who was in here, and even when I got into real estate, that's what I did. I did the math, and I just went to work resiliently and consistently for a long enough period of time to where eventually it shakes out. But people quit too soon.
For me, I think I agree with what you're saying. For me, I never had a problem going to talk to the people. I guess I don't know if I was just an arrogant little kid or just too stupid to take no for an answer. But if somebody's told me no, I'd go next door. I'd ask them.
Yeah.
Do you need services? What can I do to help you?
Yeah.
How can I earn your business?
Yeah.
That's a big thing too. When you go to talk to these customers, it's not, hey, I got this. You want to buy it?
No.
It's how can I earn your business? This is
That's
what
right.
I offer. You're saying the same thing, right? But it's just worded differently. It's not, what can you do for me? It's what can I do for you?
Well, and it goes back to what you were saying earlier about it takes it off of you, and it's about them. It's about what they need. I was doing some cold call coaching with a real estate agent last week, and he calls me up and he tells me all about this property. Never asked me a single question. And so I said, let's reverse. And so I called him up. And so what I did is I started asking him questions. One of the funny things I've always used to connect with people through real estate is I always ask them about their dream home, because people love to talk about their dream home, whether it's on the water. Like, everybody has a dream, right? And you get people to start talking about their dream home, and they will tell you everything else. But that's 100% true. What you're saying is it's about them. It's not about you. It's funny because a lot of people
pay for other people to solve their problems.
They do. That's 100% true.
If you think about it, anytime we let go of our money, it's to solve a problem. Whether it's, are we hungry? Is our car torn up? Is our house torn up? Are we wanting to?
Is it a doctor, dentist?
If I want to go buy a business, what's my problem? I want more cash flow. It's people pay for other people to solve their problems. That's the only reason that we part with our money, right?
Yeah, and leaning into that and tying it back to asking questions, you can't understand how to solve somebody's problems if you don't listen. If you're an entrepreneur and you can't ask questions and you can't listen, you're going to have a hard time, because everybody's in sales, right? If you're an entrepreneur, you're in some sort of sales, whether you think you are or not. Even buying businesses, you're selling your ability to help someone solve a problem. But it always cracks me up, people's inability to ask questions. They want to tell them they're the greatest landscaper, they're the greatest grass cutter, they're the greatest real estate agent, or whatever it is. And that's not at all the way to solve a problem. It doesn't matter. And nobody cares.
People don't care.
Nobody cares. But if you ask them the questions, hey, is your grass too tall? Is anybody showing up to cut your grass? Maybe your grass guy didn't show up last week. Hey, was he charged you? Or you don't like what he pays? Or he smoked cigarettes and you don't like that? Like, how can I earn your business? How can we do things different? How can I get in the door? And even if they say, well, hey, I'm not interested right now, you say, okay, well, how about later? You remember me, and you follow up with them. I always tell people there's fortune in your follow-up. People really suck at that too, and following up with people when they don't track their leads and they don't use CRM and they don't use a database and all these kind of fun things. Anything else you want to say?
I think that's all. Once again, I just appreciate the opportunity
to
come sit down and hang out with you today.
Thanks for being on. Thanks for sponsoring the podcast. We greatly appreciate that. So, guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for following the Kingdom Men Transform Man Nation podcast. And if you want to check out our sponsor, the Acquisition CEO, just hit him up on the website in the link below. And let's go do some winning.
All right. Thanks.
See you.